Previously on Chaos Head Noah.
ダメ？兄弟でキスなんて不潔かな？
I shook my head.
そんなことないよ。
お兄。大好き。
With those words, Naomi leapt into my arms and kissed me. I was kissing my little sister. My sister's sweet sighs passed through my lips. I was overwhelmed with happiness, along with feelings of intense fulfillment. I was brimming with love for Nanami. But, for some reason, for only just a moment, I felt incredibly sad. Warm drops found their way down my cheeks. I was wondering when this would come crashing down. And as those tears floated, hey, give me a chance to read, man! As well as Nami was, I wouldn't let anyone harm it. Yeah, I'll just read it silently. Fuck it. Diagnostic results. You are slightly delusional. Only slightly. Perhaps not everything in your life is going favorably, but you have one or more things that you can devote yourself to, and you work hard at them every day. For this reason, you probably don't have much time for things like delusions. If you keep trying your hardest, you should be able to live a fulfilling life. But I urge you to please be careful. If you by some chance fail, or lose one of the things you have devoted yourself to, you may suddenly find yourself tempted to abandon everything and escape into delusions. Ooh, 2 words. A word from Nanami. If you're going to turn out like my big bro, make sure you're someone other people can rely on when things get tough. Even better, if you stay in tune with the latest fashion trends. Oh, and it'd make me real happy if you made sure to take care of your family, too. A word from Sena. Whatever you're aiming to do, push as hard as you possibly can to achieve it. But if you need a break, take one. It's not smart to work too hard. You'll just end up burning yourself out. I recommend adding a good walk to your daily routine. My shoes are not made for walking!
集団ライブで飛び降りた5人には自殺する理由なんてなかった。家族や友人はみんなそう主張している。だがミヤさんの家族だけは違った。
Bond took his fan out from his belt to begin cooling himself.
何も主張しなかった。あっさり受け入れたって聞いてる。あまりに何も言わなさすぎて奇妙だったってな。なんでだい？
お父さんもお母さんもミヤちゃんが死んでからおかしくなっちゃったんです。
Anguish seeped from Yua's voice.
最初はミヤちゃんの事件の知らせを受けた日はそれでも泣いていたんです。お父さんもお母さんもとても辛そうでした。でも次の日の朝、なぜか2人は楽しそうに笑っていたんです。ミヤちゃんが死ぬ前と全く同じに戻ってたんです。たった1日で。私、わけがわからなくて、2人はミヤちゃんのこと忘れようとしてるんじゃないかって思って。そうしたらお父さんが笑いながら「お前に妹なんていないよ」って。ミヤちゃんが残した洋服とか靴とかを見せても全然取り合ってくれないんです。
During the time she had spent there, Yua had explained all the suspicions she had gathered from her investigation of Nishijo Takumi. Bond was a detective, and Momose was the head of a private investigation agency. If she could get the two of them on her side, then perhaps Nishijo Takumi would finally be arrested. That was what Yua had been hoping for. Nishijo Takumi needed to be arrested. Yua had sympathy for the boy's painful circumstances, so she would have preferred it if he had turned himself in to the authorities. But since he had refused to do so, she had no choice but to get the police involved. That had been her plan at any rate. But much to her surprise, Detective Bond had told her that Nishijo Takumi had been removed from the list of suspects. Yua found this news absolutely unbelievable. She did not want to accept it. Why had her theory been dismissed? It was blatantly obvious that Nishijo Takumi was behind New Gen.
そうそう。ゆあちゃんのご両親には連絡行ってるんすかね。多分行ってると思うんすけど。どうかな。
連絡と言いますと？
いや、集団ダイブのね、犯人が使ったと思われる遺留品が見つかったんすよ。
本当ですか？
It was the first Yua had heard of this. With all hesitation now evaporated, she stepped closer to Suwa.
どんなものだと思うっすか？最近別の事件でマスコミが散々取り上げてるんで有名だと思うんすけど、なんとダーススパイダーのヘルメットっす。
それを集団ダイブの犯人もかぶっていたんですか？
そう、ネットに事件の様子を撮影したビデオが流出したっすよね。あれを解析した結果分かったんすよ。それにしてもダーススパイダーといえば例の渋谷エスパー騒動の少年が有名っすよね。西条匠くんでしたっけ？なんで彼が集団ダイブの犯人と同じようにダーススパイダーのヘルメットを持ってたんすかね。
Oh, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to set Yua to go off after him, aren't you?
あなたよ。あなたでしょう。あなたなのよ。あなたが殺した。目をそらさないで。私を見て教えてあげる。あなたが知らないあなたを教えてあげる。あなたの中にはもう一人のあなたがいるの。西条くん、まだ知らないの？自覚できていないの？何も知りませんでしたって許されると思ってるの？今まで何度も忠告してきたのにどうして聞いてくれないの？あなたの中にはもう一人の人格、将軍がいる。その人格は許されないことをしているの。これ以上放置はできない。これ以上人殺しはさせない。あなたは早く病院へ行って治療すべきよ。それが嫌だと言うなら、私はあなたを警察に突き出す。将軍を放置することは西条くんの罪よ。あなたも人殺しに加担しているんだって理解して。理解できるよね。理解してもらわなきゃ困る。理解すべきよ。出てきて。私はあなたと話がしたいの。聞こえているんでしょ？将軍。西条くん、自重して。あなたは少し眠っていて、将軍にその体を渡して、出てきなさい。出てきて。出てきて。出られないの？出てこられるはずよ。出たいでしょ。出てこい、人殺し。
うざりなんだ。いっそ殺せ。
殺さない。私が殺させない。あなたは罪を償うべきなのよ。そして真実を語るべき。死んで逃げることは許さない。許さないわ。許すわけにはいかないの。
将軍は別にいる。ニュージェネの犯人はそいつだよ。
将軍はあなたよ。あなたなの。あなたしか考えられない。
My words had gone in one ear and out the other. She refused to listen to me. She was completely convinced that she knew the truth. While the 5 victims of the group dive were friends, some reports suggested that their encounter on the rooftop was the first time they had ever met. Allegedly, they were online friends who had gone together for an offline meet. Naturally, their online activity was heavily scrutinized as a part of the investigation, but there were never any signs of suicidal tendencies displayed by the victims. Furthermore, several hours before the group dive, 2 high school girls, who appeared to be twins, had been spotted walking into a fast food restaurant in Shibuya. Bond took a look around. He was sitting in the very same fast food restaurant mentioned in the report. Before sitting down, Bond had also taken the time to speak with one of the restaurant's employees. The employee had told him that the 2 girls had chatted for a while, then proceeded to take a 10-minute bathroom break. What on earth could have taken them so long in there? Bond wondered.
あなたが将軍を生み出したんです。あなたが将軍なんです。
You got it backwards, sweetheart.
現実逃避の手段。将軍はあなた自身であり、同時にあなたではない別の存在。もう一人のあなた。あなたの負の側面。あなたの弱い心を守るための存在。あなたの狂気。快楽殺人者。手段は選ばない。殺す相手も選ばない。殺すことが存在理由。誰でもよかったんですか？本当にミーアはなぜ選ばれたんですか？答えて。答えてよ。答えてください。答えてほしい。答えないと許しません。
And so it continues. Greetings, my name's Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Chaos Head Noah. So, we're still smack dab in the middle of our Mexican standoff between ourselves and Yua here. What I'm wondering, though, is how long is it going to take for one of us to budge? And by one of us, I mean Yua. Because she's determined, I'll give her that, but I don't think she can keep this up forever. Doubly so if Suwa decides to make a nuisance of himself in the meantime, which I suspect that he will at some point. Seeing as how he already went to the trouble to send Yua after us to begin with. It's only a matter of if, not if, but when, as far as I'm concerned. I guess in the meantime, though, maybe we can try and see if we can induce some reverse Stockholm Syndrome in her. And I know there's a proper term for it that I'm forgetting right now, but yeah, I'm not going to sit here for a minute trying to remember what it is. An hour or so had passed. My stomach was still growling. I was so scared that I wanted to scream, but I couldn't.
食べて。食べてよ。
Maybe if you say please?
食べてって言ってるでしょ。食べて。
Yua was still crouching down next to me, staring at me. And she was still trying to shove the pasta down my throat, too. She had stayed there the entire time, in the exact same position. Well, I hope her legs can take the strain.
食べて。食べてください。食べないと。食べて。食べてほしい。食べて。食べなさい。食べて。食べていいの？食べなよ。食べろ。
She just kept on making her demands in a series of low murmurs, refusing to do anything else. I had a feeling that another hour had passed already. I I was so creeped out, I couldn't even lift a finger. I was petrified. I was a deer perpetually stuck in the headlights. She hadn't hurt me or anything, and she hadn't forced me to eat the pasta either. And yet, somehow, I felt more and more afraid of Yua with each passing moment. She was simply waiting for me to eat, and nothing else. And yet, I was still scared shitless. A normal person would have given up after about 5 minutes, but not Yua. No. Yua had kept at it for over an hour. If this were a normal version of this kind of thing, Yua would pull my hair, force my mouth open, and scream at me to eat it, you scum! But she didn't, so I didn't have the slightest clue what the hell she was thinking. She was a total freak. She was broken. No sane person could do what she was doing. She wasn't human. She couldn't be. I'm scared. 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 I was at rock bottom. I wanted to kneel down and beg for her forgiveness. Hey, Remy! Your other boy toy is kind of being held hostage. Maybe you want to come home and do something about it, please? My entire body was covered in a thick, disgusting sweat. I was enduring so much anguish mentally that I could hardly breathe. I didn't know what to do. I never had a girl stare at me from this close, and for this long before. But who the hell has? Probably a lot of people, but I would hope that in most cases it would be under much more pleasant circumstances. If we were a couple having some lovey-dovey conversation while we rubbed our noses together or some shit, that'd be fine. But no. No, no, no. You just kept on repeating the same shit over and over again like a broken goddamn record. But this broken record never stopped fucking glaring at me. How is this even real?
食べて食べなさい食べてよ食べてください食べろ
I couldn't deal with her gaze on me any longer. Whose eyes are those eyes? So I dared to squeeze out a single word. My voice had gone hoarse.
食べるよ
Yua's murmurs stopped. She remained completely still, in the same posture as before. Well, it looks like our boy Takumi was the one to crack first. Shame on you, boy. I am ashamed to be your co-pilot. Weakling. I forced my mouth open. I nervously ate the pasta that she had been trying to feed me for over an hour. There is no way it could possibly taste good by now. My mouth was already dry to begin with, and eating this withered pasta definitely didn't help. It just sucked away any remaining moisture I had left. My mouth is dry, Yua! Care to do something about that, too? I couldn't bear the taste, so I almost didn't chew at all as I choked the pasta down. Yua blinked a few times, surprised to see me actually eating. And like a statue come to life, she started moving again.
おいしい
No. Why would it? No, it doesn't taste good at all, I thought to myself. But there was no way I could say it to her face. So I just gave a weak nod instead. Let me break the fourth wall. I'll do it for you.
よかったです
Despite what she said, Yua still had the most deadpan expression on her face. I couldn't detect even the slightest bit of happiness. She moved the fork back toward the plate she was holding, and with it, she picked up another clump of the dry, sticky pasta and held it out to my mouth once again. Did I really have to eat all of it? Would she not let me go otherwise? Give me a break already. Tears started flowing from my eyes. I couldn't hold them in anymore. I was just too scared. And yet, no matter how hard I cried, Yua didn't seem to care. She would keep on doing this until I finished the entire plate. So I ate, tears endlessly streaming down my face. Hey! Tilt your face at an angle slightly and let the tears float into your mouth. That'll help your dry mouth. And she kept on feeding me that dry, shitty pasta. By the time I finished all of it, I was both physically and mentally exhausted.
お腹いっぱいになりましたか?
Full of abject misery? Why, yes. Yes, I am.
なりましたよね。なったはず。一生懸命作った甲斐がありました。
In contrast to what she said, Yua's tone was cold as ice. Then at last, she took a small step away from me, placed the plate on my desk, and sat back down on the sofa. After sitting down, she looked in my direction, and went right back to staring at me. And as she stared, she stopped moving. Don't look at me, damn it. Please stop looking at me. I did nothing but chant those words over and over inside my head, but I couldn't say them out loud. I was too scared. Was she really going to monitor me for an entire day? This was straight up psychological torture. Just the mere thought of it made me even more depressed.
なんでこんなことするんだよ。
I was crying now, but I couldn't help but ask that. I needed to know.
僕に何の恨みがあって。
妹が死んだんです。
Huh? Younger sister? For a split second, Yua looked like she was about to cry, only to quickly reassume her ice-cold expression.
集団ダイブの被害者の一人、私の双子の妹、ミヤって言います。私は妹を殺した犯人を許さない。許さないって思ってました。そしてあなたにたどり着いた。あなたの苦しみを知りました。私は妹がなぜ殺されなくちゃいけなかったのか、その真実を知りたい。なぜ犯人が、将軍が妹を殺したのか知りたい。それとあなたも助けたい。分かってください。分かってくれますよね。分かるはず。分かるはずです。
I thought back to the video of the group dive that had been uploaded to MewTube. Had one of the crying victims in that video been Yua's younger sister? I knew full well what Yua was going through. The same kind of thing that happened recently with Nanami, after all. But that didn't mean I could forgive what she was doing right now. This crazy bitch had broken into my house, tied me up, and now she was holding me captive. Yeah, no way in hell could I ever feel sympathy for her after all that shit. I can. I completely lost track of time. My room had no windows after all. I had no way to tell what time it was. You should get a damn wall clock.
その目誰の目ってどういう意味？どうしてこれから殺す相手に言わせたの？ どうしてダイイングメッセージとして残したの？あなたは何を訴えたいの？
Usually, I just checked the time on my phone or my PC. Not that there were any other ways to do so. The fact that the only way that you were able to ever tell the time before Nanami got you that phone was just by turning on your PC. Honestly, it's kind of amazing to me that you were able to keep any appointments, self-imposed or otherwise, at all. But since I was still tied to the leg of my bed, I obviously couldn't use either method. The only chance I got to check the time was whenever I went to the bathroom, but even then it was a pretty small window. But the longer this torture lasted, the harder it got for me to get up and use the toilet. I simply didn't feel the urge to piss, likely because I wasn't drinking enough water. It felt as if I'd been deprived of all physiological phenomena for over a day now.
どうしてダーススパイダーなの？
Because the killer has poor taste.
それを被ることで何を訴えたかったの？
Because the murderer has poor fashion sense.
宗教的な意味があるの？
Maybe to him it does. I don't know. Ask him.
ダークヒーロー願望。
Well, he certainly aspires to be something akin to a martyr.
それともセロンをバカにしたいだけ？
Well, if his cult leader demands it, I'm sure he gladly would. Yeah. Yua practically didn't move an inch. She simply continued sitting on the sofa, standing up every once in a while only to sit back down right after. And her muttering hadn't stopped the entire time. How is she still talking after this long? It wasn't like I could kill time on my PC, nor could I make any calls or send any messages. I couldn't even sleep. All I could do was sit there and be assaulted endlessly with questions. Yua's mumbling was starting to sound like a mantra or something at this point. I couldn't stand being watched for this long. Sure, I had to cope with Shogun reading my mind, and the sensation of being observed by the gaze. But while those things did suck, I could still at least stomach them. But I wish I could say the same about Yua's unending watch. Her gaze was so utterly devoid of any emotion or warmth that I genuinely felt as if I wasn't even there. Like my very existence itself was constantly being ignored, if not outright denied by her. Regardless, the point is that I knew nothing about what was going on in the outside world, and I couldn't as long as I was tied up. I had lost all perception of time. I didn't know how many days had passed since I'd been tied up. I had a feeling that 2 days or so had gone by, but it sure as hell felt more like a month. Being deprived of my freedom of movement was really stressful. Every minute of however many hours had passed, I would think to myself, I need to look at a clock. That was the sole thing on my mind.
それとも、
Yua's head suddenly tilted. She took off her glasses and rubbed the eyelids that occulted her bleary eyes. She was only human, I'd imagine, so she was finally starting to get tired. She hadn't caught a wink of sleep the entire time, after all. Maybe she should have thought this through before doing it. She was just wasting her time. Nothing would come of any of this. This never would have happened if she just listened to me.
いつ出てきてくれるんですか？
Her whispers were practically delirious. Come out. She must have still been talking about Shogun.
どうしたら出てきてくれるんですか？出てきてよ。
Unfortunately for you, he won't come out no matter how much you plead. Because he's not there to begin with.
待ってるから待って。
When silence took over the room once more, Yua's body slowly tilted over. With all her strength gone, she fell to her side on the sofa. Had she fallen asleep? Had her batteries finally run out? I breathed a sigh of relief, and all the tension in my body released along with it. I hadn't even had a single moment to relax the entire time she'd been staring at me. And now that she wasn't, I could finally take it easy for a bit.
タッキー、何のんきなこと言ってんの？
Would you get out of here? I'd rather Remy be here right now than you. Saratan's voice rang out from beside my monitor.
逃げるなら今がチャンスなんよ。
How? Genius? I'm tied to the bed!
それどころかさ、今なら無防備なユアッチを逆監禁できるかも。
Tie her up with what? My freaking shirt?
そしたら、やりたい放題じゃん、ボケナス。
And you're supposed to be the hero of whatever series that you're a part of. What a very heroic thing to suggest someone do. Bound someone who's unconscious, tie them up, and do naughty things to them. Oh, I see. So I can degrade her and train her into becoming the perfect sex slave. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yua was still lying on the sofa, so I took a nervous glance at her face. To be honest, if I ignored everything else, her sleeping face was actually pretty cute. It reminded me of when we first met, that gentle smile she'd had. I obviously didn't know what Yua had been really thinking back then, nor that she'd seen me as a murderer. If anything, I saw her as an enemy, as one of Shogun's underlings. But it was her fault for making me think that. She was the one who deceived me, who betrayed me. So if I wanted to degrade her and turn her into my sex slave, this bitch had no right to complain. I still think that'd be incredibly disproportionate compared to what she's done to you, if I'm being honest here. Nor does the punishment fit the crime. I peeked at Yua's sleeping face once more. Her eyelids twitched erratically, and her face contorted in a pained expression. Then, from the corner of her eye, a single tear ran down her cheek. Could she be having a nightmare about her dead sister?
タッキー、調教師ないの？
After seeing her shed a tear like that, I'd already lost the drive.
監禁されて緊縛されてるのに？タッキーって聖人君子だね。優しすぎる。そこはタッキーのいいところだけど、時と場合によるよ。
Why don't you go choke on a cactus? That's not what I meant. Of course I wasn't going to forgive Yua that easily. I just didn't have the strength to be angry of her, nor even resist at all. It was all gone. Completely sapped. Was it because of the huge release in tension? Or could it have been because she told me about her little sister? It didn't really feel like Yua wanted to hurt me or anything, weird as that might sound. Suddenly, I was struck with an intense drowsiness. And so, I surrendered my body to the feeling, allowing myself to forget, if only for a moment, the pain my bound wrists were being tortured by. I'll think of a way out of this later. Well, you better hope then that you can catch your Z's faster than she can. As soon as I woke up, I knew something was off. Like something was missing. Still half asleep, I looked around my room. I tried to stand up, but the rope coiled around my wrists dug in deep, and the sheer pain stopped me in my tracks. The pain immediately reminded me that I was tied up, and the one that had done so was Yua. Oh. Yua wasn't here. So that's what felt off. I was the only one in the room. Maybe she went to go wash up, or go eat. Or go eat and wash up. Where had she gone? Had she gone to make food? Or to use the bathroom? I didn't know how many days it had been since you had locked me in here. But what I did know was that neither of us had been to school the entire time. We only went outside to use the bathroom or cook something. I wasn't even allowed to take a shower. I let out a heavy sigh. Yua should come back any minute now. And when she did, she'd start watching me all over again. Had Yua always been this stubborn? Or was it the hatred and regret she felt from her sister's death that made her start acting this way? I vote the latter. Regardless, how could I make her understand that I wasn't Shogun? Maybe I could show her the messages Shogun had sent me. If they were still on my PC anyway. Well, why wouldn't they be? But let's be honest. We were long past that. And why is that? Yua was fully devoted to delusional bullshit she'd come up with. I doubt she'd believe me if I did show them to her. Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, she would probably just write off your piece. Yeah, she would probably just concoct a scenario where you just basically sent yourself messages somehow, right? Yeah, okay. I guess you're not too far off in your assessment, to be fair. I needed something more concrete. Something to convince her that Shogun and I were two completely different people. If only he would just show up here. Then there'd be no denying it. It'd kind of suck for me if that happened, though. I didn't want him anywhere near me. And besides, if he came to my base, it'd probably be to kill me.
ねえねえタッキー、逃げた方がいいよ。
I am still bound and gagged! If you want to release me so I can do it, by all means, please, go ahead. Be useful for once in your miserable existence. But until then, shut up!
私、あんな思い込み激しいストーカー女にこれ以上タッキーがいじめられるのを見たくないもん。
Thank you, Sarah. But I can't run. I can't untie myself on my own. I'd obviously already made my fair share of attempts to escape, but my struggle had proved futile. Yua's knots were tight, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't even get them to budge.
私が3次元になれたら、今すぐタッキーを助けに行くのにな。
I already seen what happens when you become 3D, and it's not pleasant, so stay in 2D land, please. I don't know, as great as escaping sounds on paper, Sarah, I think just doing whatever she says like I've been doing is the far safer option. If I tried to escape and failed, it could make Yua go berserk. Whenever Yua lost her temper, it was crazy how scary she got. So I was going to do everything I could to not provoke her.
自分の命を守るために一番いい方法をちゃんと考えてるんだね。すごいよ、タッキー。
Well, at least he is thinking, unlike you.
だけど私さ、これ以上タッキーとあの女が同じ部屋にいるのは嫌だな。
Why? You jealous? As much as I hated to admit it, As long as I was tied up, I was entirely dependent on Yua to survive. Luckily, she hadn't been violent with me at all yet. She'd even cooked for me and let me use the bathroom whenever I asked. She was still treating me like a human being. And I was sure that, once she finally understood that no matter how long she waited, Shogun wouldn't come out, she'd let me go. Hell, even better, I'm sure she'd beg me for forgiveness. Of course, I'd make her get down on her hands and knees, or else what'd be the point? And while we're at it, I could accidentally grab her tits, too. You wouldn't even be able to work up the nerve to do it, you little coward. And then, it'd all be forgiven. You would go back to her own life, and I'd go on with mine. She'd never see me again, and I'd never see her again. So at the very least, the Yua threat would disappear completely. Or, if I was very lucky, there was even a chance that she would have a change of heart and end up joining my party. This ain't a shonen story, my friend. Shogun was still real and very much a problem, so Yua could step up and replace Rimi as my protector. It'd be better than nothing. We even had some common ground. Above all else, Yua resented the new gen culprit, and therefore Shogun. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. It depends. Yua's interests and mine coincided.
僕って頭良くね、天才じゃね。
Unfortunately, you do have the D-sword to prove that you definitely have the gray matter to probably technically be considered a genius, even if all other evidence to the contrary indicates otherwise. So, I mean, I can't 100% disagree, I suppose, that you have any actual smarts to speak of here. From a biological standpoint, at least. What, like you weren't already? And so, I decided to ride the storm out. Okay, where the hell was she? On the ceiling, watching you, probably. Just hanging around. Yua still hadn't shown any signs of coming back. It had been a good while since she'd left, too. I knew for a fact that at least a few hours had passed. Probably. Then you don't know for a fact, now do you, smarty pants? If you have to say probably. Where in the world had she gone? Now what, you don't know that either, Mr. Smarty Pants? Sure as hell wasn't a toilet. How do you know, Mr. Smarty Pants? Maybe she's been struck with a chronic case of diarrhea. I could also rule out that she'd been grabbing dinner, since there was no way it would have taken this long. Every time she'd gone out to buy us food, she just went to the nearest supermarket and came back shortly after. So where was she? Has she gone to school? Maybe she's cooking us. A giant rotisserie chicken. I didn't even know what time it was right now. But if it was around noon, then it was certainly a possibility. If I could have just looked at the minimum attendance chart, then I would have been able to know what day it was instantly. Would have told me a lot, really. I vote a week. I vote at this point it's probably been almost a week since she showed up at your doorstep. For example, if Yua had kept me locked up for 3 days straight, and the first day had been Friday, that would explain why she'd been able to stay here and not go to school. Because it had been the weekend. In other words, today was Monday, and Yua had gone to school. That had to be it. It had to. What day had it been when Yua had broken into my room again? My consciousness was already foggy as all hell, so I couldn't remember exactly. But what if she hadn't gone to school? What if she'd gone back home, for example? Or what if she's just lying around dead somewhere outside this container for some inexplicable reason? These days, every slut in high school would stay out overnight without asking their parents. But Yua wasn't like that. Even if she had gotten permission, staying over at my place for who knows how many nights would have definitely made her parents worry. So, knowing that, she'd gone back home in order to pacify them. Probably. That made a lot of sense, actually. Well, regardless of where she'd gone off to, she had to come back eventually. So it'd be in my best interest to stay put and conserve my energy. Letting out a small sigh, I closed my eyes. Might as well get some sleep. I couldn't sleep. Aww. I closed my eyes and tried my hardest to doze off for hours on end, but I just couldn't manage to. I ended up just staring at the door, torturing myself over whether or not Yua would come back. There was a bit of a windstorm going on outside, so the door rattled faintly every once in a while. Whenever it did, I would immediately open my eyes, thinking that Yua had come back. But no matter how many times I thought that, she still hadn't. I was left all alone in this container, tied up like an animal. Since she was taking her sweet time, I decided I might as well try to break out the restraints on my wrists. The rope that bound me to the leg of my bed was made of nylon, which was why I thought that maybe with enough force, I could break free. And so I poured all my strength into my arms. But it was no use. The rope didn't even budge. Or maybe I was just too weak. I vote the latter. After all, I was a pretty big weakling in general. An otaku freak that did nothing but play video and surf the web all day long. There was no way I could have broken that cord like some kind of movie protagonist. Tearing the cord with just arm strength alone was obviously impossible, so I tried to think of some other way. Put your back into it! Obviously, it would have been really easy if I had a knife or something, but unfortunately, I had no such luck. The only things I could see around me were magazines, manga, CDs, empty boxed lunches, that kind of stuff.
ダメだ。
I was hopeless. I couldn't even snap a single piece of nylon string on my own.
ユアは戻ってくるよね。
I unintentionally voiced those thoughts out loud, meaning I was basically talking to myself.
ねえねえタッキー、
What do you want now?
もしかしてさ、見捨てられたんじゃない？
Thinking for you is dangerous, Sayra. Especially if it's you're the one doing it. Usually when you're the one from what I've observed, when you tend to think, bad things tend to happen to me shortly after. Abandoned me. As in, you had left me here to rot? As in, she wasn't planning on coming back? If that was all true, I was screwed. Surely she hadn't just tied me up and expected me to survive on my own, right? If you're gonna lock someone up, then you should realize you're responsible for them until you let them go. Come on, now it's just common sense. No, she couldn't have abandoned me. I was overthinking it. Yu was definitely going to come back. She still hadn't uncovered Shogun's true identity, so surely she wouldn't give up yet. Yu would never abandon me. This is fine.
知ってる？そういうのってさ、ストックホルム症候群って言うんよ。
I wouldn't call it Stockholm Syndrome in this case, but rather, she's the only person, sans Remy, because she's occupado at the hospital, who's able to actually come here and make sure I don't die of starvation or dehydration or what have you. Because, as you can see, I am kind of tied to my bed. Yes, I obviously know what Stockholm Syndrome is. But you're wrong. This isn't like that. My brain isn't dependent on you or anything. As if I would ever warm up to that mental case, let alone fall for her.
僕もつい最近、ナナミのことがあったから、ユアの気持ちはわからなくはないとかって脳内で妄想してなかったっけ？
You can't even keep your timeline straight. That happened hours, if not days ago, not minutes ago. The hell are you going on about? Was I lying to myself? Was I just forcing myself to believe that I could trust Yua? Maybe I was. Stockholm Syndrome was a psychological phenomenon in which people deceived their own selves for the sake of survival. Okay. Tip me. Stockholm Syndrome, a psychiatric term. In cases such as imprisonment, the hostage is forced to spend an extensive amount of time with their captor in an enclosed space. As a result of this extended interaction, the hostage may begin to develop positive feelings toward their captor, despite them doing horrible things to them. This phenomenon is known as Stockholm Syndrome. It can be described as a state of self-deception based on the idea that building a trusting relationship with one's captor, rather than resisting them, will increase chances of survival. The name is derived from a real hostage situation that took place in Stockholm in 1973. But what else could I do in this situation? I had no other choice. I had to rely on Yua. Remy had backed out, and Nanami hadn't come to check on me for a long time now. My parents let me know when they were worried about me via Nanami, but they never actually checked on me personally. And the only other person that knew I lived in this container was Yua. Which meant the only person I could rely on was also Yua. Therefore, I had to lie to myself. It was the only way I could survive. I didn't want to die. I didn't want Yua to mistreat me, and I didn't have the courage to resist her using force. So that was why I decided to just submit. I wouldn't resist. And then, if I waited long enough, eventually she'd understand. That was the only way an otaku freak like me would be able to survive. I would trust in Yua. I would trust in her by lying to myself. And then, I'd make it out of this without anyone getting hurt.
あんなストーカーメガネ女を信じちゃダメだよ。タッキー、ゆとりすぎ。
For the first time in my life, I completely ignored what Saratan had to say. You should do it more often. So please, come back soon, Yua. You're coming back, right? She back! And she does not look pleased. And then, it happened. Without warning, the door burst open. It caught me completely by surprise, and I immediately froze. I could finally see outside. The sky was dyed orange by the setting sun. And there, obstructing my view of it, was Yua. I was relieved from the bottom of my heart to see her there. Realizing I hadn't been abandoned nearly made me cry tears of joy. I was a little disgusted of how easily I'd been tamed, but my disgust was immediately overshadowed by the intense feeling of relief.
おかえり。
I had no one else, so I was forced to be dependent on her. That was why something so fucking stupid had somehow come out of my mouth. But
あなた邪魔だわ、西条くん。
yes, and water is wet. We're just stating facts at this point, Yua. Yua quickly walked over to me, crouched down to meet me at eye level, and then she grabbed my hair and yanked on it. Hard.
邪魔なの。あなたがいなければ将軍は出てくるはずなのに。なんでいるの？自重してよ。少し引っ込んで。あなたと話しても意味ないの。私はあなたと話したいんじゃない。出して将軍を出しなさいよ。
Yua was acting weird. Was she getting impatient? What was your first clue, genius? Because Shogun wouldn't come out? Did that mean she was going to resort to more drastic measures? This wasn't what I'd planned. I believed in her. Your mistake. I trusted that she wouldn't go berserk on me. Your mistake. Was she about to betray me again? Who am I kidding? I'm the only one who feels betrayed. I was forced to face reality. I had decided to place my trust in Yua all on my own. She had never asked me to. Not once. Had I just been naive? It was because I was an otaku freak, and a shut-in too, wasn't it? I knew pretty much nothing about human interaction because of those things, so tricking me was like taking candy from a baby. If I was right about this, then I'd been right about everything. Nothing good can come from 3D. It was the time for me to become a real shut-in. But this time, I'd lock myself in the 2D world.
見て。
Yua thrusted something in front of my face. It was a notebook of some kind.
妹の日記です。家に戻って取ってきたんです。これを読んであなたは知るべきです。妹は、ミヤちゃんは集団ダイブが起きるもっと前からあなたに、いえ、将軍に狙われていたんです。
Even since before?
ストーカーされていたんですよ。だから集団ダイブは5人を殺すのが目的だったんじゃない。他の4人は巻き添え。狙いはミヤちゃん一人だった。
Well, going based on this information, I guess we can take this as Mia noticing that Sua was scouting for her.
そうでしょう。そうよね、将軍。答えて。出てきて答えなさい。
Yua's voice was getting more and more hysterical. My fear of her had come back full force. My heart was beating out in my chest. My entire body trembled. But even so, I still couldn't accept what Yua was accusing me of. It was just a bunch of delusions she'd come up with. Nothing but pure falsehoods. I never even met Yua's sister. I desperately shook my head from side to side. But she grabbed my hair so tight, the pain kept me from moving very much.
まだ出てこないつもりですか?
Yua's face drew even closer. Close enough to whisper in my ear. And then, she brought the diary even closer to my face.
て、みやちゃんの苦しみを見なさい。
She forced me to look up. Then, while still holding the diary with one hand, Yua started dexterously turning the pages. And when I saw it written there, it sent a chill down my spine. Oh, dang. What is this? What the hell is this?
日記の最後のページ、ミヤが最後に書き残したもの。その目、誰の目。日付は9月6日。集団ライブでミヤが殺された前日です。
将軍だ。あいつに思考盗撮されてたんだ。
思考盗撮って何？違うでしょ。違うわ。ストーカーされていたんです。将軍に、あなたに。
僕は将軍じゃ。
あなたの中にいる将軍にです。
だから言ってるじゃないか。将軍は他にいるんだ。
将軍は西条匠です。言い逃れしないで。その目誰の目というあなたが昔書いた作文がその証拠です。他にもいくつもの状況証拠がある。あなたしか考えられないの。考えられないのよ。あなたじゃなきゃおかしい。妹はあなたに殺された。
That's not true. It's not true at all. I don't sleepwalk, and I don't have multiple personalities either. Shogun does exist, but he isn't me. He's someone else. I swear.
どう思う？この日記を見てどう思うの？ミヤを追い詰めて殺して満足？こんな日記を書かせるぐらい追い詰めて満足？どうしてミヤにこんなひどいことをしたの？どうしてミヤを殺したの？どうして？
ユアは間違ってる。
Everything you say is wrong.
間違ってるのはあなたよ。あなたは人を殺した。殺したじゃない。人殺し。
だってこの日記はユアの日記じゃないか。
何です？
Yua looked puzzled. It stuck out to me like a sore thumb ever since I'd seen it. What was written on the front cover? It was Yua's name, wasn't it? How'd I miss that? Yua's diary. At first, I thought I was just mistaken or something, but Yua had said exactly whose diary she thought it was.
妹の日記です。
But if it was her sister's diary, shouldn't it have said Mia's diary?
これはユアの日記だ。表紙にそう書いてある。
何言ってるの？
Yua deliberately avoided looking at the front cover.
これはミヤちゃんのよ。死んだミヤちゃんの日記。
Is she being is her mind being messed with by Suwa or something? And that's why she thinks this is Mia's diary?
あなたに殺されたミヤちゃんの。ミヤちゃんのなのよ。ミヤちゃんが書いた。死ぬ前に書いたの。
だったら表紙を見てよ。
Terrified, I nervously pointed at the notebook. Without showing a hint of hesitation, Yua closed it and took a look at the cover. And when she did, she turned back toward me and said,
やっぱりミヤちゃんの日記だわ。
Yeah, she's definitely having her senses screwed with right now. Huh? She must have seen it just now. There was no way she hadn't. Yua's diary was right there, written in bright red marker. So how had she...
これはミヤちゃんが書いた日記。私を騙そうとしたの。騙されるわけないでしょ。私はミヤちゃんとずっと一緒に育ってきたんだから。生まれてからずっと一緒だったんだから。あなたなんかよりずっと私の方がミヤちゃんのことを知ってる。知ってるの。
ユアには見えないの。はっきり書いてあるじゃないか。それはユアの日記。
Yua's hands suddenly shot up to her temples. Her face was warped in pain.
違う。この日記は私じゃなくてミヤちゃんが。私。西条くんに自覚があるはずないから。あなたは DID 多重人格なんです。
君は誰だ？
私はユア。私は。
Could it be that I'd never been the one of DID? It'd been Yua all along?
楠木ミヤなんて実在するの？
Had the police ever officially announced the identities of the group dive victims? Ever since she was a minor, they would have just called her Girl A or something, right? Since she was a minor. Or...
ユアに双子の妹なんて本当にいたの？
While it was certainly possible that someone named Kusunoki Miya had existed and had died in the group dive, it was also possible that they were completely unrelated to Kusunoki Yua, the person standing in front of me right now. They could have simply been someone with an extremely similar name.
ヒルア。
Suddenly, Yua wrapped her hands around my neck. Her fingers were oh so slender, and yet they harbored a terrifying amount of strength within them. I couldn't breathe.
いたわよ。ミヤちゃんは確かにいた。はっきり覚えてるもの。
証明できるの？
Yua's grasp weakened.
自分は DID じゃないって証明できるの？楠木ミヤじゃないって証明できるの？
I, for one, couldn't prove that I wasn't my alter ego. After all, the only way to prove that I wasn't Shogun would have been for him to show up next to me.
できるわ。
Yua took her hands off my neck. She let the notebook fall to the floor.
ミヤちゃんにはほくろがあった。
Yua slowly began to remove her uniform's top. And how would I know? How would he know that? How would... the group dive just simply involved gathering Mia and a whole bunch of people up to a freaking rooftop and driving them to go to fall off of it. Last I checked, none of the victims were ever stripped of clothing at any point.
左胸の下、そこにほくろがあった。私にはないほくろ。
She unbuttoned her blouse one button at a time, her hands trembling impatiently as she did. Yep. That be a mole. And you say Mia had it? Well, dang. Maybe in this route, and maybe in you as a dedicated story route, Mia actually is an alternate personality of hers? But she didn't stop there. She went on to remove her bra, too. Her fairly voluptuous breasts were covered only by her hands. She fumbled around, searching for a certain spot on her skin. I searched, too, with my eyes. And just under her left breast was a mole.
ある。
あるよ。
どうして。私にはほくろはないはずなのに。私誰。
Yua's face grew pale as a ghost, and her lips trembled in fear. Her eyes swam in place, gazing into the abyss as she wrapped her arms around herself. She didn't even care that she was still half naked.
私はユア。私はずっといい子で。ミヤちゃんはずっと悪い子で。私はずっといい子になりたくて。ミヤちゃんはユアちゃんが大好きで。ユアちゃんはミヤちゃんが心配で。
Her ramblings gradually turned even more incoherent. I was pretty freaked out. But I knew I couldn't just abandon her and make a run for it. I knew full well exactly what mental state she was in, because I, until only a moment ago, had been in the same exact one. From the moment Yua had told me I had DID, I've been suffering from non-stop anxiety, instability. So I really did understand. I knew what it was like to feel like your entire existence was one step away from crumbling to dust. I didn't know if she was suffering from DID or if it was something else entirely. But what I did know was that there was something wrong with her, and there always had been. I knew people could be two-faced, but she was far, far too good at it. It was still hard to believe that she'd been acting when we'd first met. The difference between her back then and her when she snapped when she snapped was like night and day. So much so that it didn't even feel like the same person.
ユアは DID なんじゃ。
違う。ちゃんといた。ちゃんといたの。ミヤちゃんはちゃんといた。
Still covering her breasts with one arm, Yua fished for something in the top she'd just taken off. Then she took out her phone, hit a few buttons, then showed it to me.
見て。ここにいるでしょ。私たちがいるでしょ。
あ。
Well, thank God. I don't have to. I have a much more safer work thumbnail to use for this video now. Thanks, Yua. She did exist. There were definitely two people on the screen there, and the image didn't look edited either. The two looked eerily similar in that picture, although they were twins. The only difference was that one had glasses and the other didn't. Even their hairstyle was the same.
私はここにいる。
君はどっちなんだ。
私は。
She pointed to the one on the left. Let me guess. The third melt. Right at that moment, the floor started shaking violently. An earthquake? It's even bigger than the last one. I was struck with a violent ringing in my ears. It was such an intensely shrill, resonant sound. My head felt like it was about to burst open. Yua grabbed her head and fell to her knees. I wanted to do the same, but my hands were tied up, so I couldn't. It felt like my ears were being pierced by thousands upon thousands of needles. And then... I was hit by an enormous impact, and blinding light dyed my vision completely. If that was the third melt, then...
私たちは入れ替わった。
At the Shibuya MCD, a large wave of students arrived as soon as evening hit. I could hear the high-pitched voices of high school girls, joyfully chatting away with one another. I took a moment to look out the window, and then I took out my phone. It was now 5:02 p.m. on September 7th. 2 minutes past the time she was supposed to be here. I took a bite out of my chicken sandwich, feeling a little bit annoyed.
ごめん、みやちゃん。待たせちゃった？
Oh. You have switched. So, as I was saying, if that was the third melt, that earthquake, I mean, then I guess we must be approaching the end of this route now. Yua-chan appeared, tray in hand, and sat down in front of me. I let out a small sigh.
うん、待った。5分くらいおまけしてほしいな。あ、みやちゃんもチキンバーガー？私もだよ。
She pointed to the chicken sandwich on her tray. The two of us were twins, so it was only natural that we had the same preferences. She really didn't need to point out every little time that we had something in common, but she happily did so anyway.
みやちゃんとこうして渋谷で会うのって初めてだよね。
I didn't go to school in Shibuya, and the two of us saw each other at home all the time, so we just didn't have many reasons or opportunities to meet up in Shibuya. That was all there was to it.
私にお願いしたいことって何？私にできることなら何でも言ってね。
I took the last bite of my chicken sandwich, sipped some of my iced tea, and then I leaned toward Yua-chan.
実はこれから人と会うんだけど、彼氏？そんなんじゃない。今まで一度も会ったことない人たち。たちって何人？4人かな。どういう関係なの？ネットで知り合った人。別にやましい関係とかじゃないから。アニメのファンサイトみたいな掲示板があるんだけど、そこで。へえ、私インターネットなんて全くやらないからよくわからないけど、そうやってネットで知り合うことってよくあるの？まあね。でもオフ会は私も初めてで。みえちゃん人見知りだもんね。人見知りじゃない。人に合わすのが苦手なだけ。そういうことにしておいてあげる。で、大丈夫なの？初めての人たち相手にうまく話せそう？本当は会おうと思ってたんだけど、今になってやっぱり怖くなっちゃったんだ。めんどくさくなっただけ。でもドタキャンするのも悪いし、だから私が代わりに行けばいいのね。
Yua-chan was really perceptive. She understood what I was trying to say before I even finished my sentence. Usually, that was more annoying than it was helpful, but this time, I was glad that I didn't have to explain everything.
そういうこと。お願いしていい？
if you two switched right before she ended up going to the group dive, then that would further explain why her death had such an impact on you, because this last minute switcheroo you decided to do with her ended up getting her killed in your place.
みやちゃんはそれでいいの？友達を作れるチャンスなのに。そんな小学生みたいな扱いしないでよ。別に友達を作りたいわけじゃないし。もうみやちゃんは本当に意地っ張りなんだから。言ってくれる？わかった。私は楠木みやになりきればいいのよね。そこまでしなくてもいいけど。どうせならとことんやった方が面白いじゃない。そうだ、制服も入れ替えようよ。なんでそんなにはしゃいでるの？みやちゃんから頼み事されるなんてめったにないでしょ。だから嬉しいの。ゆあちゃん、バカみたい。どうせバカなお姉さんですよーだ。ほら、そうと決まれば着替えちゃおうよ。
Yua-chan forcefully pulled me by the hand. We went into the private bathroom, and after a couple minutes, we swapped all clothing and personal effects.
みやちゃん、水泳の制服似合うね。きっとお父さんやお母さんでもどっちがどっちなのか見分けつかないよ。あ、でもメガネかけてたら一発でバレちゃうかな。これも外して行くのはちょっと難しいかも。何も見えなくなっちゃう。初対面の相手なんだからここまでしなくてもよかったのに。もうまだ言ってるし、待ち合わせの時間そろそろなんでしょ。それまで打ち合わせしておこうよ。私アニメのことちっともわからないけど、何を話せばいいの？適当に相槌打ってればいいよ。どうせ一回こっきりしか会わない人たちなんだし。そんなことないよ。この出会いを通してお友達付き合いすることになるかもしれないでしょ。もしかしたら彼氏もできちゃうかも。興味ない。あるくせに。なかったら会う約束なんてしないもの。うるさいな。頑張って楠木美也はとってもいい子ですっていうのを印象づけてくるね。本当にそういうのいいってば。
If she did that, it'd be even harder for me to go a second time. I just wasn't as sociable as she was.
それじゃ行ってくるね。よろしく。そこまで頑張らなくていいから。はいはい。じゃあね、みやちゃん。
Yua-chan smiled and waved goodbye, wearing my uniform, holding my bag, and then she disappeared into the crowds of Shibuya as none other than Kusunoki Miya. That had been the last time I'd ever seen Yua-chan. I then had gone home, waited for her to come back, only to see that case on the news. When I came to, my headache was so bad, it felt like it was splitting in two. The first thing I realized was that I was pinned under my bed. The second was that the bed had fallen on top of me. So not only was my head about to burst from the pain, but my back was too under the weight of the bed. The only thing I could move were my eyes, which allowed me to witness the sheer devastation in my room. Yua was slumped against the wall, staring off in a daze. She'd been half naked before the earthquake hit, but it seemed like she put her clothes back on. Before, she went completely topless while also keeping her glasses on, which had honestly brought some life back into me. But now her glasses had fallen to her feet. The lenses were cracked.
助けて。紐ほどいてよ。
It took nearly everything in me, but I managed to fight through the headache and call out to Yua. And with the most empty eyes, she looked at me.
思い出したの。
Literally, who cares? I don't give a shit about what you remember. Just untie me already. I can't move under this thing.
思い出したのよ。
Yua slowly got up and easily untied the tight knot. Almost too easily, in fact, considering how dark it was and how she wasn't wearing her glasses. Finally a free man, I managed to slip out from under the bed. But that was about as far as I went. My head felt as if it was being cracked open, just like it had during the previous earthquakes. Even standing up felt impossible, so I endured the pain on all fours.
ユアちゃんだったのよ。
Yua was once again mumbling something in a low voice.
集団ダイブで死んだのはミアじゃない。ユアちゃんだった。
ユア、何を。
私はユアじゃない。
A wry smile spread across Yua's lips.
私はミアよ。自分をユアちゃんだって思い込んでただけ。あの日私たちは入れ替わったの。それでユアちゃんは死んだ。本当は私が死ぬはずだったのに。
Suddenly, the expression on Yua's face disappeared, complementing the empty eyes that had yet to leave her. And then, she extended her hand toward me.
西条くん、もう将軍のことなんてどうでもよくなっちゃった。結局ユアちゃんは私が死なせたようなものだから。ねえ、一緒に来てほしい。
どこへ。
ユアちゃんが死んだ場所。一緒に来てくれるだけでいい。
You're gonna kill me, aren't you?
お願い。
I didn't know exactly why she was asking me this, but I had an idea. An idea that soon became a realization. Mia, was planning to die. I had no idea whether or not I should stop her. It was probably too late for me to say anything that might reach her. And so, I took Mia's hand and went to pull myself up. I felt a stabbing pain in my head. I pictured my eyes being dyed a scarlet red. The throbbing pulsation of the blood vessels inside my head reverberated throughout my entire body. It hurt too much to move. I didn't have the strength.
歩ける？
Mia supported my body with her shoulder.
歩いてくれないと困るわ。一緒に来てほしいの。私を助けると思って。お願い。
With my body supported by Mia, the two of us began walking in the direction of Shibuya. Shibuya had transformed into a city of death. Everywhere you looked, corpses were strewn across the ground. Some were covered in blood, some had their limbs severed, some had their heads crushed. Not even a shred of human dignity could be seen in the absolute hellscape spread out before us. Not a single glimmer of the city's former glory remained. The only things it held now were death, ash, and despair. Nothing more. Huge cracks tore through the roads. Large scars indicative of how it could all come crashing down at any moment. Huge chunks of debris had fallen from the crumbling buildings, blocking our way. It was difficult to even walk in a straight line. But none of that was enough to make us lose focus of our goal. Mia and I marched on, completely disregarding the cries for help around us. Our destination was the building towering above in the distance. Cornelius Tower. The tower was still standing. The outer walls were crumbling in certain spots, but the structure itself had more or less tanked the earthquake. It still stood straight and tall. As far as we could tell from the outside, it seemed that the lights were off on every floor. Maybe everyone had evacuated, leaving the building vacant and abandoned. Naturally, the lobby was completely empty. There didn't seem to be any electricity either, so the elevator didn't work. Our only option to get to the rooftop would be the emergency stairs. When the details behind the group dive case had appeared online, I had done a little digging into the building. Cornelius Tower stood at 184 meters tall, with 41 floors above ground. There was absolutely no way I could climb that many floors. Not when I couldn't even walk straight with this headache. And yet, Mia kept on supporting me. Leaning on her, we climbed the stairs step by step, sweat dripping down our foreheads.
お父さんとお母さんは私が自分のことをユアちゃんだって言い出して気を使ってくれたんだと思う。私をユアとして扱ってミアが死んだことにしたのかも。
She was talking to herself. I listened along in silence. Well, she probably didn't need me to listen. She was just talking aloud, and I just happened to be there.
昔からそうだった。私は生意気な娘だったから。両親はいつも私を腫れ物にでも触るかのように扱ったわ。ミアを死んだことにするなんてね。親はユアちゃんよりミアに死んでほしかったのかもしれない。それも全部私のせいだけど。自分がユアちゃんだと思い込んだ私のせいよ。ユアちゃんが死んだみたいに私も死ねばいいのよ。
ユアはどんな人だったの？
憧れだった。羨ましかった。たまにイラついたりしたけど嫌いじゃなかった。むしろ大好きだった。ユアちゃんのこと大好きだった。私のことを分かってくれるたった一人のかけがえのない人だったもの。ユアちゃんが笑顔でいてくれれば私はどんなに辛いことがあっても嬉しかった。いつも私のことを心配してくれたわ。心配させてるのが申し訳なくて私はつい冷たく接してた。それなのにいつも優しくて。ユアちゃん
Nia kept climbing the stairs, tears gently streaming down her face. Were they tears of regret? Tears of sorrow? Or tears of guilt? That I couldn't tell. Must you really die? I mean, this is already turning into a pretty sad state of affairs as it is here. So you deciding to join you and death would just be the cherry on top of the depression cake that's already been concocted here. And that's a cake I really do not want to eat right now. The wind was stronger than I thought it would be on the helipad. A panorama of Shibuya's nightscape spread out before our eyes, but now its former brilliance was nowhere to be found. The city had been fully engulfed in darkness. One could just barely make out the landmarks like Tokyo Tower, Roppongi Bills, or other buildings situated in Shinjuku in the distance. The Shibuya beneath our feet was veiled in complete and utter silence. There was very little light, allowing darkness to complete reign over the ruined city. If it were noon, then Shibuya's new form would be nothing less than stupefying.
西条くん、もしよかったら。
Mia gently let me go, retracing the arm that had been supporting me. I immediately sank down to the ground, not a single ounce of energy left in my legs.
一緒に飛んでくれない？
No, I don't want to fly. I prefer being grounded, thank you very much. Mia stared into the dark night. Fierce gusts of wind sent her long hair fluttering in the sky, hiding her expression from view. That was when I realized Mia had come here to jump, to follow in her sister's footsteps. With that in mind, my answer was clear.
やだね。僕は死にたくない。なんで僕を監禁した女と心中しなくちゃいけないんだ。
そう言うと思った。
One step at a time, Mia walked toward the edge of the heliport, facing the strong wind head on.
そうそう。西条くんと予約しに行ったセイラちゃんのフィギュア。
Suddenly, she stopped and turned around.
ちゃんと買ったのよ。とても可愛くてセクシーだね。すっかり気に入っちゃって、私の部屋の机の上に飾ってあるの。
A transient smile spread over Mia's lips. Of all the times for her to have said that, why now? I don't want to take care of her! One serotonin is bad enough!
そんなこと言っても僕は君に同情しない。
同情なんて求めてないわ。それじゃさよなら、西条くん。私を殺した人、私もゆあちゃんのところに行くね。
What Nishijo-kun had just said was very reasonable. It was strange, though. It had made me feel lonely. There was this heart-rending pain in my chest. In the end, I had never been afforded the opportunity to confirm whether or not he was Shogun. Maybe he had been telling the truth, and I was the one who'd gotten it all wrong. But even if I wasn't wrong, there was no point in holding a grudge against him now. If only I hadn't asked Yua-chan to switch places with me back then. If only I had just gone out to the offline meet myself, then Yua-chan would still be alive. Yua-chan hadn't deserved to die. She had so many friends. Her parents had loved her more than anything. And she'd been the smartest, most beautiful girl I'd ever met. And yet, she had died anyway. Kusunoki Yua had died anyway. And when she had, Kusunoki Mia had disappeared along with her. She'd vanished into thin air, becoming a ghost. That was the choice I had made back then. I could no longer tell whether I was alive or dead. All I knew was that Yua-chan wasn't here anymore, so I'd rather be dead. I stood at the edge of the helipad, where Yua-chan and the other 4 had jumped off that night. Looking down made me feel dizzy. The whole nightscape was pitch black. All the lights in the city had gone out, and yet, even in that darkness, I could still tell just how high up I really was. I wondered how Yua-chan had felt when she jumped off of here. She had probably been terrified. I'm sorry, Yua-chan. I'm sorry you had to go through something so terrifying because of me. I'll be going too, very soon. I will take the pain that you endured, the pain that I alone was supposed to feel, and engrave it onto my body, Yua-chan. I took a deep breath. My heart and mind were at peace. I wasn't afraid of dying. I spread my wings. My arms lay in the empty air. I closed my eyes. And then I stepped forward into the bottomless abyss before me. And with nothing there to support me anymore, I fell. My whole world turned upside down. There was nothing left to chain me back. Even though I was in free fall, it almost felt like I was floating. Floating amid the rumbling of the wind. The ground was rushing toward me. The very same asphalt that Yua-chan had crashed into 2 months back. The hardened tar that had crushed her bones, ruptured her organs, and sprayed her blood and gray matter across itself. I don't want to die. Just a moment ago, I hadn't been afraid to die. But the second I'd lost control of my body, I had been overcome with a tremendous sense of dread. I don't want to die. Even if Yua-chan had died, I still wanted to live. This was just my survival instincts taking over. I screamed. I screamed from the bottom of my soul. I desperately reached out my hand to the distant night sky above me. I knew there was no one that could grab onto it, but I reached out all the same. There was no end to my screams. I pleaded. I don't want to die. But nobody heard me. Nobody grabbed my hand. I simply fell, with the earth coming closer and closer. I had felt my body shatter into a million pieces, but that feeling had disappeared soon after. That was a delusion? When I came to, I found myself collapsed on the roof of Cornelius Tower. Nishijo-kun was in front of me. He still wasn't looking at me, but he was reaching out his hand out even so. I had definitely jumped. No doubt about it. I had definitely taken a nearly 180-meter dive and smashed right into the ground. But now I just sat there, staring at Nishijo-kun's hand, utterly dumbfounded. I even forgot to wipe away the tears streaming down my face.
気が済んだ。
Nishijo-kun's words were blunt and curt.
君に死なれるのは困るんだ。 まるで僕が突き落としたみたいじゃないか。僕は殺人犯扱いされたくないね。
私落ちたのに、自分で飛び降りたのに。
妄想でも見てたんじゃない？
A delusion. You're telling me all those sensations, all that pain, was just a delusion? That's impossible. It felt so real. Welcome to my world.
ねえ、西翔くん、ゆあちゃんはあんな痛い思いをして死んだんだね。なのに私、ゆあちゃんと同じ痛みを味わおうとしたのに、私は死にたくないって思っちゃったの。本来死ぬのは私だったのに、死にたくないって。もう飛べない。あの痛みを知ってしまったら、もう怖くて飛べない。私どうすればいいのか。
今ので君は一度死んだ。ユアの痛みを知ったなら、もうそれでいいじゃないか。これからはもう一度楠木宮として一から生きていけばいいと思う。ユアの分まで。
ありがとう。ありがとう。
I reached for the hand that she extended out to me and took it. It was so very, very warm. I could feel his body heat through his palm. A warmth so comforting. I felt my hands stop shaking. Reached the sun and moon ending. Well, Certainly wasn't expecting that plot twist. That Yua was actually Mia all along, and that they did a last-minute switcheroo right before the group dive happened. But what I want to know is this particular detail only canonical to Yua's story route, or does it also apply to all the other ones too that she features in? Because if the latter is true, then yeah, it pretty much recontextualizes everything that we thought we knew about her right from day one. Maybe we'll get some definitive confirmation on whether this is true or not when we get to the last ending of this story. Maybe this will end up being one of those things here that will get some sort of mention towards the end, if it gets mentioned at all. But yeah. Other than that, looks like her story route didn't end up being that much longer than Naname's. So that's like two in a row, two of the other heroines' story routes in a row that only go on for about 2 or more hours each. Are they all like this? Because I hope not, because I mean I would hope that the two that there would be a bit more to it than just across the board than just a couple hours of unique story content featuring them. I mean in Nanami, well, in Yua's case, for at least I could understand the whole story playing out the way it does. Especially now that everything's all said and done. So I mean, I'm not particularly confused or upset or anything about how it played out. But Nanami, though, I felt like there could have been a bit more that could have been done with her. That could have fleshed out her relationship with Takumi a bit more. Not too much more, because I mean, you don't want to drag things out needlessly, but certainly more than just a couple hours. But yeah, I hope the other heroines' routes aren't this short on the average here, because that could limit the storytelling potential a bit. Not gonna lie. At least from my perspective, it would. That being said, though, I guess now I have to decide whose route I want to go see next. I think I'll do Sena next. And then, after that, I think I'll do Kozupi, followed by Ayase, and then finally I'll do Rimi. I think that's what my game plan is going to be from this point forward, starting with the next episode. So when we come back to Chaos Head Noah, I'm going to be starting the first episode of Sena's story arc. So, with that being said, I hope everybody who tuned in today enjoyed this latest episode of Chaos Head Noah. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. And I will see you all next time. Take care.